Welcome to Postcards to the Universe with Melisa Caprio. Do you believe in magic? What if you were told that all you had to do was get a little creative and work a magic spell to bring anything you can imagine into your life? Here on Postcards to the Universe, we will share manifesting, tips, postcards, creativity, abundance, and prosperity. Here is your host, Melisa Caprio.
Hello, Happy New Year, and welcome to Postcards to the Universe with Melisa, creating the life you crave. Happy New Year, everyone. How's everybody doing? I hope you had a wonderful holiday and a new year, and that you have set your intentions for the new year. Today, I have a really cool guest. He is pain management expert and author, Dr. Alan Weisser, with his book, New Possibilities, Understanding the Mystery and Mastering Chronic Pain. So for those of you who are dealing with chronic pain, and I know some people personally who have that, this is going to be the show for you. To all my regulars, I love you guys. Thank you for being here every week. And for those who are new, tuning into my show for the first time, I want to welcome you. Thank you for being here. A little about me. I am an author, a photographer, and an artist, and my book is titled Postcards to the Universe. Harness the universe's power and manifest your dreams. And in my book, there are 30 manifesting stories along with photographs that I took of the contributors manifesting postcards. They're kind of like little mini vision boards. And in the book, I include writing exercises, and it helps us get clear on what we want to manifest, and a toolbox full of exercises on how to manifest love, money, career, and health. So we're going to be talking a lot about health today and much more. So if you're interested in doing the inner work and reading people's incredible journeys of transformation, inspiration, and manifesting, you can go and purchase my book. And you can also purchase Dr. Alan Weisser's book, New Possibilities, Understanding the Mystery and Mastering Chronic Pain. Now, my publisher keeps reminding me, so I'm going to share it with you guys, that my book and all the books over at Mango Publishing Group are on sale for 30% off until January 31st. So grab a copy for yourself as a gift in the new year, right? Because it's all about manifesting. And I'm also asking, I always ask this, for people to send me manifesting postcards. If you're like, what are you talking about? If you go to postcardstotheuniverse.com, I tell you how to create a manifesting postcard and where to send it. And I love getting them. And if you're on Facebook, go over to Postcards of Love, where we share inspiring stories. So I want to talk a little bit before I bring Dr. Alan out about some things we can do in the new year to bring in what we want. And I'm not a big resolution person because I feel like that sets us up for failure. So I say let's practice a few different things. And gratitude for what you already have in your life is a perfect thing to practice on a daily basis because it's very powerful in bringing in new things into your life. Writing love letters to yourself is something that's very powerful. So maybe every day, maybe not a whole letter, a little love note to yourself as a reminder that you're a wonderful person and that you deserve to have all the happiness in the world. And when you are feeling gratitude, share it around, share your happiness with others because it's contagious, right? So we want to share our joy with the people that we love. And in 2023, it just started, so it's a new year, new possibilities, and it's very easy to get sucked into the negative. So try to stop yourself from those negative thoughts and put something positive in its place. You can do it. It's not always easy in the beginning. And like I said, when we're going to be talking about pain today, it's probably not easy when you're in pain, but if the more you practice it, I think the easier it gets. And allow the space for your body to heal and for your dreams to become real. It's something, sometimes we want to rush everything, and we have to allow the space for it to enter our lives. And I always thought that practicing letting go of things that are no longer working for us is also very powerful. and creating the space to bring in what we do want. And so if you can find a practice that allows you to let go, and maybe you can use body movement as part of it, you can incorporate meditation, which I'm sure is very powerful, which I know is very powerful in healing. And I will tell you how I know this in just a second. Also, this is a great time to clear away the clutter in your life and in your house and in your head and in your space and your drawers and all of that stuff. Get rid of everything that no longer you use anymore, that no longer serves you, and create that space to bring in those new things into your life. So before I start to talk to Dr. Allen and you hear what he has to say, I just want to tell you a little story, and this is a true story. So it's about our cat, Gracie. So we had two cats, and one of our cats came to us unexpectedly, Willow, and she unfortunately had feline leukemia, which she tested negative for when we originally found her. And it didn't show up, but she had it and she passed away. So she passed it to our cat, Gracie, unfortunately. Gracie's been doing okay, but she had a tumor on her bladder. And this was just right before Christmas. In fact, we canceled our Christmas plans to go to Disney World until just this past weekend because of that. And for the last few weeks, my sister has been praying, and we've been doing little rituals, healing rituals. And every day I've been visualizing part of my practice when I work out in the morning and I stretch and I do yoga. I've been visualizing her tumor shrinking, 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 shrinking until poof, it just disappears. And it's been a practice every day along with the prayers. So the both of us kind of we knew we were each doing something, but we weren't really talking about it. So just last Thursday or Wednesday of last week, Wednesday, a week ago today, my sister calls me and tells me, "You're never going to believe it. I took Gracie to the vet to get her rescanned, to get her blood work done, to see if I needed to get her more pain medication because she was in pain, but she was still eating. So we were allowing her to let us know when it's time." And she said, "The tumor's gone. It's gone." The doctor couldn't believe it. And he's like, "What are you doing?" And she said, "Well, telling her how much we love her, praying for her, doing Reiki on her, visualizing." So just saying, I don't know what that means. I mean, we're very, very blessed, and I'm super excited about it and grateful. So it's going to be interesting to talk about healing today. Real quick, next week I have Patricia Lindner as my guest. She's a spiritual career alchemist, creative instigator, an empath, intuitive healer, and empowering mentor on the journey from seeker to finder. And she's the founder of Compass from Within, with over 17 years experience in teaching, training, coaching, and healing. Now, to get to my guest today, Dr. Alan Weisser, with his group at New Options Incorporated, runs a pain management practice. He has an extensive background in working with the psychological problems people face when they are living with complex and chronic pain. By focusing on collaborative, realistic goals and practices, his practice has provided support that empowered chronic pain patients to transition from dysfunction and disability to empowerment and recovery. Dr. Weisser is uniquely qualified to lead others in experiences of self-discovery. When he was 12 years old, he broke his neck in a diving accident at a local swimming pool. He developed an unshakable belief that he could and would recover. During this 2-year recovery, he came to understand that it was not just physical pain that affected him. The injury had caused a high level of emotional suffering, and his self-confidence was severely shaken. He is the author of New Possibilities, Understanding the Mystery and Mastering Chronic Pain. Welcome, Dr. Alan Weisser.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm so glad to talk to you today. So you can also follow along if you go to your website, which is newoptionsinc.com. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, great. So, Alan, I'm going to let you tell your story. Obviously, it started when you were 12. So about how you came to run a pain management practice and write a book. And so you can share a little bit with us about your background.
Okay. So it's actually quite a journey. The event of breaking my neck was sort of a starting point that's most relevant to the moment.
Mm-hmm.
But when I've thought about this, especially when I've done more interviews recently and finished writing the book, I was always a person who was oriented towards people who felt disempowered,
Mm-hmm.
whether it was in the friendships that I saw, the things I got involved in. I started out professionally as an attorney, and the first job I had was with Legal Aid Society, trying to help underprivileged people have their legal rights. And eventually, through a number of self-discovery practices and experiences, that led me to change professions to become a clinical psychologist.
Okay.
And in that, my main journey with that started working in Bronx Psychiatric Center for 10 years. I started as an intern. I stayed on because those patients were amongst the most disempowered humans I'd ever encountered. And my nature, as you mentioned earlier, is to, when things get to be impossible or people say you cannot, my reaction is maybe, but I'm more interested in what's possible. So that gave me an opportunity working with patients who had been pretty much warehoused and forgotten to develop ways of working, collaborating with a lot of other people, learning lots of new systems to really move towards this notion that they're not likely to, in the moment, to heal, but they can recover. What does that really mean? It's moving from surviving to thriving.
Right.
That you can have a life. It may be different, but that doesn't mean you can't. And you and I both know many examples of people who've done this. So when I started with pain management about 20 years ago, that was when I decided to move on from the chronically mentally ill. The system had all kinds of problems. I'd spent many years knowing how to help people, but not seeing the system necessarily support it. And working with chronic pain patients was almost an accident. But I quickly recognized when I started working in a very, really good chronic pain program, which had patients coming in 8 hours a day for 6 weeks, that the approach to helping them was lacking the real depth emotional analysis, the psychological part of it, and most importantly, existential.
Right.
That you don't look at a person who has a physical injury as a person with a physical injury. You look at it as a person who's been injured.
Okay.
And then the question is, all right, what's happening as a result of the injury? We refer to it as collateral damage. For example, if you have a pain problem that makes you stop being active, one of the things that happens is deactivation, deconditioning. You might have your sleep disrupted. Well, those are collateral damages because of the injury, and then those can create more pain and actually interfere with healing. So typical chronic pain patient over the last 20 years, we've seen can be up to 200 collateral damages. And the medical system, and I have a lot of respect for it, don't get me wrong, and I work with really good people, the medical system addresses 10% of that. And that's the difference, because with most of my patients, they have persistent pain that at the moment doesn't have any particular cure. Well, then the question is it really about whether you can get less pain, or is it about restored functioning? So the focus is on that. And the first part of the title of the book, Unraveling the Mystery, the first step in this is most people don't know what I just told you. They go like, really? Is all of that stuff happens and it matters? Because no doctor's telling me it matters. No PT is talking to me about it. I go, well, let's talk about it. Let's see if it's relevant. And it is. So part of engaging people in this work is to help them to understand that there's so many things they could actually work on more successfully. They may not be able to deal with that herniation any more successfully, but the reaction to having it, the impact that it has, it's kind of, if you think about it, if there's an earthquake or another natural disaster, the first thing is to just stabilize the situation, right?
Right.
But beyond that is an active recovery, and it may not restore things to the way they were. But you have to stabilize it, have people be really clear on how many things have been damaged by this. Not just the fallen buildings. It might be no water, it might be no electricity, it might be not enough medical services. So the first part of really moving towards recovery for people is to go like, this is the negative reality, the totality of it. And for a lot of people, I'll send them an intake packet that's 70 pages long, which covers all of the bases we've learned. And it's daunting and somewhat shocking, but the immediate reaction to that is, wow, if I had known this, I would have understood why I'm suffering so much. Right? They think they're up against one or two opponents, if you think martial arts, but they're actually facing 20 or 30. So, and then this is, I think, most relevant to the work that you do and that what you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
Philosophically, I've always been oriented towards the idea that humans are sort of a conduit for the creative energy of the universe.
Right.
In my philosophical journeys and spiritual journeys, which I've had many, that's been very consistent. And just like in the martial arts, there are many different systems that approach that, different ways of thinking, different practices.
Mm-hmm.
There's no one that's better than the other.
Right.
But in reference to chronic pain, we approached it. I'm scientifically trained, and my background is in the journey. So we approached it kind of like, what's the best martial art? I've been a martial artist for about 50 years, so I tend to think that way.
Mm-hmm.
What would be the best defense and way to overcome, right? In a situation, I often, in the beginning when I was working with chronic pain patients, go like, what do I think I can do? There's so much damage, so much suffering, but my nature is to go like, I'm more interested in seeking opportunities in the situation and making it and what's possible.
Right.
And,
I'm going to
and
pause you. I'm going to pause you here because we can really get into this conversation because we do take a commercial break at this time.
Sure.
So let's take it here. And then when we come back, I really want to get into the deeper with the chronic pain. So stay tuned, guys, and we'll be back in just a couple minutes.
Conscious media for conscious minds. OMTimes. Host your show on IOM-FM, the radio network of OMTimes Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of OMTimes. Hosting a show on IOM-FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community.
Hi, I'm Melisa Caprio from Postcards to the Universe, creating the life you crave. Do you believe in magic? What if I told you all you had to do was get a little creative and work a dream spell to bring anything you can imagine into your life? Well, guess what? I've got the spell for you. Postcards to the Universe, a global movement for manifestation, is a casting magical tool for you to use whenever you want. How does living in passion sound to you? Join me in my movement where you get to create in the magical playground. Let's think outside the box and do some playful conjuring. By casting out our desires with a manifesting postcard, we explore our hearts and allow the alchemy of our dreams to appear. And don't forget to tune in each week here on OMTimes Radio with my show, Postcards to the Universe, creating the life you crave at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. I share tips on creativity, abundance, and prosperity, and you will be introduced to the coolest guests, trailblazers, mystics, and creatives who enrich our lives.
My name is Victor Furman. Some call me The Voice. I've always been fascinated with human nature, spirituality, science, and the crossroads at which they meet. Join me Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio, and we'll explore these topics and so much more on Destination Unlimited.
The rainbow is God's promise of hope for you and me. And though the clouds hang heavy and the sun we cannot see, we know above the dark clouds that fill the stormy sky, hope's rainbow will come shining through when the clouds have drifted by. Teresa Caprio is the president and founder of Rainbow Guardian Inc., a nonprofit 501c3 serving the intellectually challenged/developmentally disabled, including autism. Teresa started the foundation in 1995 so she could help make a better life for her intellectually challenged daughter. Her dream is that the Rainbow Guardian will provide the necessary tools and education to help the public understand the special needs population, because it's often discarded in mainstream society. To find out more or make a donation in support, please go to www.rainbowguardian.org. Rainbow Guardian's special mission is to see these unique people live a happy, full life and have a future of liberty and equality.
Welcome back. So if you're just joining me today, I have my guest, Dr. Alan Weisser. He is an expert in pain management, and he's also the author of New Possibilities, Understanding the Mystery and Mastering Chronic Pain. So, Dr. Weisser, let's talk about, for people listening, I mean, we've all had pain, right? We get hurt, we have pain, and it usually goes away, and, we'll take Advil or ibuprofen, and it's gone. But when you're talking about chronic pain, it's something different. So can you share a little bit about what does chronic pain even look like?
Yeah. I don't use the word chronic anymore because it sounds like a life sentence. But
yeah, exactly. I like that you said that. Yes, you're right. It does. Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, the word I would use is persistent.
Persistent pain. Okay.
The pain is, you hope it would resolve, you treat it, you hope to achieve healing and recovery, and there are a lot of conditions that at the moment, and that's another thing that I say to people, look, right now that might be as far as you can take recovery, but given the world we're living in and the advances in science, medical science, and which is why I would tell all my patients to stay in touch with the latest research because, for example, 10 years ago, you couldn't have an artificial disc in your back. Now you can. So this idea that for the moment, it's persistent. Okay. It doesn't mean it's permanent. It might mean that it's going to take time to get to something that's going to cure it or completely heal it. But what you want to do, no matter what, is limit how much it impacts your ability to function as a person and do your best to maintain. Christopher Reeve, remember the Superman from way back in the 70s?
Yeah.
I don't know if you know much about his story and the decision he made after he became paralyzed.
No, I don't.
So here's this big movie star at the time. He was a very big movie star. He's horseback riding, he falls, and he's totally paralyzed.
Yeah, I remember that, but that's as far as I know about what happened with him. Okay.
Well, so he says to his doctors, you know what, I'm going to exercise and do physical therapy because if I don't and there's a cure at some point, I'm going to be so atrophied it won't matter. The doctors basically say, don't bother or you're wasting your time. It's not going to help. So here's the interesting part. So he does this. He engages in this for 5 years. And to everyone's surprise, not only is it useful in maintaining his body, but he actually regains 30% sensation.
Oh, I didn't know
which
that.
nobody thought was even remotely possible, right? And when I had my broken neck, the first day I was in the hospital, the doctor said, you're a cripple. You're fragile.
Oh, wow.
All right.
And you were only 12 at the time. You were only a child.
Yeah. And I stayed with that notion. I didn't do sports in high school. I didn't try and really risk anything physically. By the time I got to college, my innate nature goes like, you know what? If you're going to have to be like this for the rest of your life, so be it. But you only know that they told you that, and maybe they were right. So what do you think I did to try and challenge that?
Well, I would imagine that you were using your thoughts to create actions to overcome what they were telling you.
Yeah, that's true. But more concretely, I signed up for judo and trampoline.
Well, that's good.
And I can tell you, Melissa, I still to this day remember my instructor. You've seen judo, so you know what that looks like.
Yes,
right?
yes.
I remember the first throw where my instructor grabs my arm, he's throwing me to the ground, and I remember on my way to the ground, it's either going to kill me or something else.
Yeah.
I was willing to test it. That might have been foolish, but I have learned throughout my life that what people are certain about is not necessarily certain. Now, you want to be prudent in testing limits. So bringing back around to persistent pain. So it turned out I'm fine. I've actually done martial arts for a very long time, and my neck is fine. Here's kind of the irony. Years ago, like 5 years ago, for the first time since the accident, my neck was x-rayed by a chiropractor. And he goes, you really have to look at this. I go, what are you talking about? He says, I've never seen anything like this before. And this gets back to what you're saying about healing and the power of your orientation towards the problem. He said, you have a natural fusion. That's why you don't have a problem. He said, I've never seen that before. I don't even know how that would happen. I do think it has a lot to do with my conviction, which was absolute. That even if I was technically at risk, that I didn't have to be.
Right.
And that kind of goes back to something I think you said that was extremely important. And there's a lot of this is philosophical, and I hope I'm not jumping around. But
no,
when
you're
you talk
good.
about Yeah, when we talk about the power of the universe, right?
Mm-hmm.
Its best understanding right now with physics is that the universe started with energy,
Right.
which manifested into something otherwise, right?
Right.
I
Yeah.
think that human beings are an exact replica of the universe, that we are creatures of energy, and that we have the same power to create the universe does.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is in our societies, we're not taught that. We're not trained in those practices, not in most places, right?
No, we're not.
And you probably know the current literature on placebo effect is actually that is demonstration of the body's innate ability to heal.
Yes.
Well, if I've got the innate ability to heal, how come nobody ever told me that? You know, so I'm relying on medications and on interventions, and not that they're not helpful, but what if we can totally heal ourselves from anything?
Yeah.
So that kind of gets around to the idea of when I talk to people about the pain, I go, it's not, you have a challenge. The challenge is you've got persistent pain, and more importantly, it's so impactful that it affects your level of functioning in significant ways. If it doesn't, it's unpleasant. But part of the syndrome with persistent pain is it's not just affecting you in a way that's unpleasant, but it's actually challenging whether you can be you. It's challenging whether you can function effectively. That's what makes it so devastating. It's not just that it hurts. So
yeah, it affects your whole life. It affects everything.
Yeah.
I mean, especially your ability to rest. I mean, anybody who's been in pain or even sick, if you've ever had the flu, you know, you can't rest. It takes over everything. So learning how to live with it where you could actually function and function in a positive way is really important.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people have no idea how to do that. They just go to a doctor. The doctor gives them pain meds. Then they become addicted to pain medication. And that's what they're relying on. Just a little relief from their pain. And that's not a very fun way to live your life.
It's true. There are a lot of different interventions. The pain medication is definitely an issue. But more importantly, that may be necessary or helpful. But for example, people who take medication for anxiety and depression, if they knew what depression really was, if they knew what anxiety really is, they wouldn't need medication.
Yeah.
People don't know, for example, that depression is actually a way of coping. And what you're doing when you're depressed is trying to shut down anxiety and anger. And you're having a lot of that because you have a lot of threats to your needs. So there's a lot of things in this practice and the way we evolved it that make certain interventions from the medical profession unnecessary. And then you don't get caught up in the side effects.
Right.
So,
well, I know you guys have a whole, you talk about it, you call it your life plan and recovery approach. Right? When people come to you and say, okay, I'm dealing with, we'll call it persistent pain. I've been like this for, I don't know, 10 years. I can't take it anymore. Help me. Like somebody comes to you and says, help me. What do you start with? How does it start?
Starts with a 10-minute conversation on the phone where I mention to them that they're suffering not just from their actual injuries, but from collateral damages. That changes it right there. And then they fill out this extensive intake packet, which details a lot of that, and they can do a self-assessment to see if they've been affected. It changes the mindset. They go like, I understand it now more than I did. I realize there's areas that can be worked on. Most of the things we identify actually can be recovered from. Unlike the medical part of it, there's no mystery in the way in which these things are manifesting and what you can do with them. So this lets you, I think, with the most relevant thing, I think, in terms of our conversation, at least for me, I understand that most pain patients do not want to hear, if you want to be able to recover and thrive, all you have to do is engage in several years of self-discovery, changing the way you operate as a person, and you'll be all good. They want to hear what's the medication, what's the intervention, right? So with respect for the audience, if you're not wanting to get into something that sounds like it's going to take a long time to be helpful and challenge you in ways that you haven't been challenged before, I would understand why you'd be reluctant. Now, if you talk to me, if you start sessions, every session is a demonstration of this practice to show people it works. You don't have to wait 2 years. You know, as you know, it's a journey.
Yes.
Right? In martial arts, you want to get a black belt, just show up at the gym, right? So I invite people to show up. I think it's harder when they're reading the book. They don't know me. Maybe it's helpful if they hear me talk about it. But frankly, having a conversation is probably the best way to bring home that this is going to be immediately impactful in ways that are meaningful, that will build over time and have increasingly greater leaps and bounds. For example, I had a patient, a neurologist, who had the worst kind of back pain problem I've ever seen, where she had totally intractable nerve-related pain that just take a toothache and multiply it by 100.
Oh,
So
God.
just imagine 24/7, no treatment for it, no cure for it. She tried to have a surgery for it, which actually made it worse. So when I met her, she basically said, in 3 months, when my kids graduate from high school, I'm just going to kill myself.
Right.
Right?
It was becoming unbearable for her. Yeah, I understand that. Mm-hmm.
It was at that level, and a lot of people get there. And I said, okay,
Sure.
I get it. Let's just start talking. All right. I respect that. I understand it. 3 months later, she told me, I'm not going to kill myself. I go, like, are you having less pain? She goes, no. I go, what changed? She said, I just don't see it the same way anymore. Because I'd introduced these concepts that showed her there was a possibility of how she experienced it. As you know, pain is not a uniform experience. You know, for example, if I'm a soldier or a police officer, I don't know from personal experience, I can't imagine getting shot and still fighting.
Right.
Right? But they do.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
In martial arts, I've learned to handle a lot of pain, which most people would be stopped in their tracks on. So once you know that, you go like, why am I having not just an unpleasant experience, but why am I experiencing something that totally overwhelms me? Being overwhelmed by it is not a given. So this turned into something which I find is the most exciting part of this. If you look at the book, you'll see something referred to as the existential immune system.
Mm-hmm.
This is the foundation of our recovery practice.
Okay.
That humans, by definition, are creatures of infinite potential, right?
Right.
We know that. We celebrate it. We love to see when people overcome things, right?
Mm-hmm.
I watched a young woman on America's Got Talent last night who was born without any arms, genetic defect, and she's a ballet dancer. And there she is on the stage. You can imagine becoming a ballet dancer, you don't have arms, and elegant and at peace and truly loving herself and dancing beautifully. So I think all human beings have that potential, but if we don't learn that, if we don't know how to access that, then it may not work for us the way we need it to. So I say to people, look, you have this potential that conceivably could help you to overcome what you're dealing with. That would create all kinds of options and possibilities. Most people with chronic pain don't even want to deal with how much they've been damaged.
Right.
That's a hurdle to overcome. But then once they go like, well, I have to try something else. So what's the existential immune system? We all know about the physical immune system, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you think about it, you and I decide to create a human being, and we design an immune system. Well, why leave it at the physical body? We have an emotional immune system. We have a psychological immune system. More importantly, we have an existential immune system. Mm-hmm. And what that means is humans attribute meaning to everything that happens, and the danger is in the meaning you attribute. If you say to me, your pain is killing you, if you say your pain is killing you, you've attributed a meaning to that that's going to be detrimental.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So the existential immune system is based on a really simple idea. All human experience is translated into thoughts and feelings, right? And then those thoughts and feelings determine action.
Right.
So we looked at that and we said the basic ingredients of the system are thoughts and feelings, the system of thinking, system of feeling, and that they're actually tools. And do we know how to use them? For example, people don't know that emotions are actually tools. They're not just an experience.
Right.
The two most important tools, anxiety and anger, which is a real shocker for most people. You know, anxiety is not shameful or weak, and anger is not bad. The misuse of those is.
Right.
So we started educating people and going, let's look at the way you're using your feelings. For example, if you suppress your emotions, repress your emotions, you're actually messing with the machine.
Yes.
And you're interfering with the fact that, nobody tells you to trust your head, right? They tell you to trust your gut. Well, your gut is your anxiety.
Yes.
So
that's why it affects so many people in their stomach, right? They have severe anxiety. They get an upset stomach. They can't eat. It affects their digestion system. Yeah, it goes right to your gut for sure.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. That part's true. But more importantly, it's representative of a certain truth. I will shorthand some of this. What we discovered and has been practiced across about 2,000 patients is anxiety is a fire alarm. You'll never feel any level of anxiety unless your needs are being threatened. That's part of the design. It's a warning system. Just like we have other warning systems, this is the master warning system. Any need being threatened will register at some level of anxiety. It'll be directly proportional to how threatening it is. You know, and then I go like, okay, it's good to be on notice when I run into a lion in the jungle, I might die. Right? That's no thing, right? But I still need to take action, right, to deal with the threat. That's where anger comes in. Anger is focus and energy to reduce or eliminate the threat.
All right, hold that thought. Hold that anger thought, because I want to get into anger, because anger is affecting a lot of people, especially right now, and it's causing a lot of pain, right? So, guys, stay tuned, and we'll be back in just a couple of minutes and get deeper in this conversation.
The Real Conscious Connection. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM. OMTimes Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. OMTimes, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Imagine yourself being transported to India, to the banks of the Ganga and an ashram in Rishikesh. Visualize that you are welcome to satsang with an American sannyasi who shares the wisdom of her guru. Your visualization has manifested. Join Sattvi Bhagawati Saraswati for inspiration and transformation every Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio.
Hi, I'm Melisa Caprio from Postcards to the Universe, creating the life you crave. Do you believe in magic? What if I told you all you had to do was get a little creative and work a dream spell to bring anything you can imagine into your life? Well, guess what? I've got the spell for you. Postcards to the Universe, a global movement for manifestation, is a casting magical tool for you to use whenever you want. How does living in passion sound to you? Join me in my movement where you get to create in the magical playground. Let's think outside the box and do some playful conjuring. By casting out our desires with a manifesting postcard, we explore our hearts and allow the alchemy of our dreams to appear. And don't forget to tune in each week here on OMTimes Radio with my show, Postcards to the Universe, creating the life you crave at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. I share tips on creativity, abundance, and prosperity, and you will be introduced to the coolest guests, trailblazers, mystics, and creatives who enrich our lives.
If I could be you,
and you could be me,
for just 1 hour.
If you could find a way
to get inside
each other's mind.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
We've all felt left out. And for some, that feeling lasts more than a moment. We can change that. Learn how at belongingbeginswithus.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Welcome back. So, Dr. Weisser, let's talk about anger. You said that's an emotion that is something that we could deal, we should really look at, especially when we're dealing with persistent pain. So I'm just going to pass that right over to you. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, I will tell you it is the most important human emotion. It's more important than love, happiness, a lot of other emotions we tend to think of as really important. They are. Mm-hmm. But we're talking about functional, right?
Okay.
The basic mechanism of any organism is to design for survival. So what happens is anger in its true form is a form of energy. We have forms of energy within ourselves, just like nature has it.
Yeah.
You can see that energy operating with anger and anxiety on an MRI. Mm-hmm. Right? So the goal is to channel it. For example, lightning versus electricity. If you don't channel it, it's destructive, right? Mm-hmm. So anger is simply focus and energy. It's that first moment when you have that reaction. The key to whether it's going to be constructive or destructive is whether or not you know how to channel it to reduce threat. Yelling, screaming, and hitting or buying into crazy logics or conspiracy theories actually does not reduce a sense of threat. It increases it.
Right.
So anger is not a bad word, and it's not a bad thing, and it's not something unnatural. It's as natural as breathing. The problem is, since we don't know how to use it effectively, it will abuse us.
Right.
And we often suffer the same thing with anxiety. If you don't know how to use it, you can end up with anxiety disorders and worse.
Mm-hmm.
So part of the problem is that there's a tremendous amount of bigotry and bias towards that these two emotions are highly discriminated against because most people, including some other evolved literatures, don't seem to get that these are functional.
Right.
They're tools. You know, what happens if you handle a loaded gun without a safety to a little kid?
Sure.
You know, what are the odds that's not going to end badly? We're these magnificent, yeah.
I just want to clarify for mine and then whoever else is maybe thinking. So you're dealing with persistent pain. So you're saying that when we're having we had the injury, we have the persistent pain, it's not going away. So we're getting anxiety around it. And of course, it's making us angry. The why me? Why is this happening to me? I'm a good person. I shouldn't have to deal with this. Okay. I just want to clarify that. And that is impounding the pain.
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead. Just wanted to clarify.
and if you don't know how to use them properly, it's interfering with power.
Okay.
It's interfering with that potential because they're designed, imagine that you had $1 million sports car and you said, why don't you take a test drive? And I do. What are the odds I'm not going to damage the vehicle? I don't know how to drive something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we can appear to be fine. We can survive. We can be successful, but that doesn't mean we're operating in an optimal way.
Mm-hmm.
So one pathway to that is to look at the use of those emotions as well as other emotions and see whether they're meeting design specifications that you're actually operating. And that is a key issue in coping systems. Part of your coping system is how do you deal with your feelings. Right. So if it's true that anxiety and anger only come around when your needs are threatened and you've got 200 needs threatened by chronic pain, it's understandable that you may be overwhelmed.
Sure.
On the other hand, if you know how to effectively and efficiently process that, you don't have to be.
So
and
how
if you're
do we
not
do
being
that?
overwhelmed, well, there's specific techniques that are designed to help a person do that. This one, I'd have to show you some material on it, but there are steps to where you work your way from whatever is triggering those feelings down to what needs are being threatened, and then you tap into your wisdom, your knowledge, your accumulated experience to address it. People do this, but they do it backwards. They start with what they know to address a problem they haven't clearly identified yet. The technique we use gets you right down to the fundamental threat to need, like threat to self-love, threat to provide, threat to relationships. It's incredibly enlightening to people, very powerful. Most people will solve some concerning problem they have in 5 or 10 minutes that they've dwelled on and suffered with for weeks and weeks and weeks. And that's not a brag. That's just practice. And then the other part of it, this existential immune system gets into the thinking process. You're probably familiar with how damaging judgmental thinking is. How damaging assumptions, rationalizations, magical thinking. There are forms of thought that actually are not empowering. Yes. So we kind of work our way through how their thinking process operates and whether it's optimized. We get involved in conflict embracement. We don't call it resolution. Because if you can work something through with somebody when you have differences, it'll bring you together. You want to embrace that conflict, not avoid it. Okay. And then we work on what is known as self-regard, where you learn to treat your needs as equal to others, that you don't make a decision contrary to your own needs unless you know you can live with it. Many people do not do that. They make decisions based on values and a lot of other things.
Yes.
And most importantly, help people understand their lives, their childhood, what evolved, their way of coping, from understanding what it meant as a child to experience the environment. It's not psychoanalytic. It's really a meaning-based assessment of childhood. Now, you put all of that together, and what happens to people is their awareness expands.
Okay.
And when their awareness expands about the truth about who they are, what they are, and where they're going with this, and how they're currently dealing with, we talk about, do you want to evolve your operating system, become you 2.0? Once they change the perception, the awareness, the perception changes, right?
Right. Absolutely.
And then, and that changes thoughts and feelings. So then you're not, as you said yourself earlier, you're not against yourself. You don't become your own enemy by catering to a lot of disempowering thoughts and actions. I have a way of talking to people that you said in your own fashion a minute ago. I say to people, no thought about the future or the past is worth having in the present unless it serves your needs in the present.
Right.
Now, that can be a practice. So I think that what I'm talking about is something that other people know about, and they know how to do it through other systems. This is simply another school of, let's call it, existential martial arts. That's quite powerful. It certainly stands on its own along with other systems, which is why the next book, which is in the works, do you know who Sadhguru is? Are you familiar with him?
No, not.
You might want to take a look at him. Sadhguru is
I
an
will.
amazing Indian mystic who's created the largest not-for-profit self-help approach to helping people in the world. Millions of followers. He's all over YouTube. But he talks a lot about, inner engineering. He says we don't have a user's guide. Well, the title of the second book is Human, a User's Manual. Turns out that we may have that information out there, but a systematic approach to it could really help people to understand that and then make use of it. So, this all sounds great on paper, and if I hadn't worked this through with so many patients for so many years and seen what happens, I wouldn't be so passionate about it. But it's consistent with everything I've ever known and believed and actually have done for myself.
So I learned how to process my emotions. I'm dealing with persistent pain. I learned how to process my emotions. It will help me live my life and engage in my life so I won't be focused on the pain, which is not necessarily gone, but is more tolerable, or is that would that be correct in how I'm saying it? Because we're not talking about how you're going to say all this and then all of a sudden you're going to wake up the next day and your pain is gone, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we don't want to say that. So you're helping us learn how to live with the pain where the pain hasn't taken total focus of everything in our lives.
Right. It's about you becoming, that's why it says mastery and not management. I don't use the word management. You become the master. So, and there are a lot of, part of the problem is when people have chronic pain that has functional impacts. Let's say that you can't engage in intimacy. Well, there's a lot of ways you could do some form of intimacy, but it's simply not the way you want to do it. But most chronic pain patients will just throw the baby out with the bathwater. If they can't play with their grandchildren the way they want to, they don't. So the first step is to go, what can you do, not what can't you do?
Right.
It changes the mindset when you realize my life might look different, but we're not one-trick ponies. What makes anybody think that you're not going to have to evolve who you are as you go through your life, right?
Yes. Well, mindset is everything. It's everything about anything that you approach in any area of your life. It's your mindset about it. Yeah. I mean, we're hearing more and more of this, and it's interesting that this is the same message that I talk about and I've other guests talk about, and you're talking about it in the approach of dealing with persistent pain. It's your mindset is going to help you live with the pain and thrive. You can thrive. People think, my life is over.
Yeah,
You're
that's
saying,
exactly right.
No, it's not over unless you think it's over, right?
That's right.
Unless you,
That's
right.
It's a choice. And look, I respect suffering. I had plenty of it myself. If a person gets to the point where they go, I'm ready to get off the mat or just throw in the towel, I go, okay. But what if there's another possibility? I'm always challenging people, is that it or are there other possibilities? And then they find them. At some point, people go, you know what? Why am I thinking there's no possibilities? Why am I not looking at a challenge as an opportunity instead of something to crash around?
Yeah, that's why when you're hopeless, it's so distressing, when you have no hope. So as long as there's a possibility somewhere that gives you that glimmer of hope that, maybe I'll consider trying it this way. Why not? What do I got to lose, right? This isn't working for me, so why don't I try this? So what the people that come to you that are just, can't move their bodies, they're at their wits' end, how do you light that fire or that light bulb? What do you say that makes them say, you know what, maybe I really need to think about this?
Okay. Well, the part that's hard to communicate, if you look at the book, you'll see that all the things we're talking about then have a solution. And a lot of those solutions are practical. For example, if you're too pain to be able to do ordinary exercise,
Right.
then I recommend people take the Karate Kid approach. For example, when you turn a doorknob, if you use, isometric contraction, you can actually strengthen the wrist. If you focus on how you're climbing stairs, you can be working on keeping your physical conditioning in a non-traditional approach, just based on ordinary activity. And people never thought of that. They don't think of life as an athletic event. If they know certain activities like mowing the lawn or doing the laundry is going to flare them up, they don't think to do a warm-up and a cool-down. So I'll say, look, do a warm-up. And then what they find is they're less likely to have a flare-up, where it's not going to be as bad. So I introduce a lot of practical approaches to dealing with these problems, and they begin to think, I am not totally disempowered. I am not simply at the receiving end, but I may need to change what I do and how I do it.
I like that you said disempowered. I think that's it. I think people feel disempowered, and when you give them the opportunity to feel that maybe they can be empowered, it can change everything. Yeah, I like that.
And each of these, if you look at the book, in every category of impact, there are very practical solutions. Some of the solutions are more philosophical and in depth. I think sometimes reading the book can be challenging. There's a lot of new ideas in it.
Sure.
For example, you know how people get hung up in this idea of loving themselves?
Yes,
A lot
definitely.
of people struggle with what they call low self-esteem.
Sure.
Well, here's the bulletin. There is no such thing. All right?
There's no
We
such
designed
thing.
the human
Right?
entity, right? We designed the human entity for survival, but we make survival based on self-esteem being transitory, based on who you are. Why would we do that? Right? You can change who you are. So self-esteem is innate. Whether you have access is different. It's based on the fact that you have infinite potential. What could be better than that?
Right. That's true. That's a good way. That's really good. Never thought about it like that, but I will now. I like that. I like when I get new thoughts planted in my head. So, Alan, if people want to work with you, are you seeing clients? Do you do through Zoom? Do you take phone call? Like, how do you work with people?
Yeah, I'm still actively in practice. I see about 40 patients a week. I am seeing them on Zoom. So if you're interested in doing that, you can simply email me about that. And if I can get you into the schedule, which I do find ways to do. But what's evolving is this. The book is out there, and that's nice. We've also developed classes, which are going to be launched in February. One of the series of classes is actually for spouses and for family, because they're the 24/7 staff nobody helps.
Yes, the caretakers.
Yeah.
Sure.
So we're going to have classes, but what I think for me personally is more important is, you know how AA and NA are so helpful to people because they use a technology to help with addiction?
Yep.
Well, chronic pain is not an addiction, but it is a recovery-based way of thinking about things. But there's no technology out there like AA or NA that people could practice together that they don't need a professional for. So what we're looking to do is to evolve an online community. If you look for self-help groups with chronic pain, they're mostly commiseratory groups. They're people who talk about how much it hurts and how bad it is. And that's helpful to know you're not alone. But this technology is the how-to. And just imagine you're a chronic pain sufferer and you can get into a group of people, work together as peers and do this.
No, that's great. Yeah, because if you're sitting around just complaining and talking about how much pain you are, you're deepening that the wheel, that hamster wheel that you're on, right? You're not getting off. It's just you keep telling yourself over and over and over again. Everybody's telling you, oh, this is the worst thing in the world. I'm suffering. So am I. So there's really no hope. There's no light at the end of the tunnel in that. So yeah, that's really, really great. So, because we only have like a minute left.
Sure.
So people can find all this out at newoptionsinc.com. Correct? You're going to have all that information there?
That's it. And if they want to get in touch with me directly, they can just email me at Weisser@newoptionsinc.com.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. Anything you want to leave us with real quick?
I hope that people understand that just because life is challenging and look at world history, right? Look at what's going on right now.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that it can't be the golden age. It doesn't have to be the dark ages. But if you're not willing to challenge your innate potential and then link up with other people, right? We're all in this together.
Perfect. Thank you, Dr. Alan Weisser, for being my guest today. It was really enlightening. I really, really learned a lot today, and I love that. Okay, guys, thanks for listening to Postcards to the Universe with Melisa, creating the life you crave, and I'm wishing everyone a wonderful day, a wonderful week filled with joy, abundance, and love. Peace.
Thanks for listening.